All right, good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. And I say that because most people, I am assuming, are in different time zone. I've also been told that there are people from India who are tuned in to this very important dialogue that India Abroad is hosting today. And today we are discussing the diaspora and when should they speak up or should they stay quiet? And today we are delving into a topic that has garnered significant attention recently. And the role of the Indian American community in shaping the US India relations. Now, as most of you must have kept up with the news cycle, Indian parliamentarian, the leader of Congress Party, Shashi Tharoor, recently penned an op-ed, and he titled it "Why Indian Americans Are Silent and Its Cost," where he expressed concerns over the perceived silence of the Indian diaspora on critical issues affecting the current India-US ties. And he talked about the tariffs, he talked about the guest worker visa restriction, and so on and so forth. And he argued that this silence allows negative narratives about India to flourish and urged the diaspora to be more vocal in advocating for India's interests. And in response, we've had prominent Indian Americans also write rebuttals in Indian newspaper and websites. And one that was penned by Suhag Shukla basically said that Tharoor misunderstands diaspora and we are not proxies for India in the US. So she emphasized that the Indian American community is neither obligated nor equipped to serve as a mouthpiece for the Indian government, kind of highlighting on the complexities that the diaspora faces and the challenges that is faced by the diaspora, including the rising hate crimes and political polarization. So, as we explore these perspectives, we are honored to have an esteemed panel whose voices provide critical insight into these questions. And India Abroad has been able to get them together to discuss this very important question that the diaspora is facing today. So, joining us today, and I'll go with the alphabetical order that I always do in these things, because everybody is very important on this panel. So start with introducing Atul Keshav. Again, does not need any introduction. A seasoned diplomat, the current president of U.S. India Business Council. I want to get that right. Shaping, and that organization is essentially has the pulse and has been shaping the strategic partnership and economic standpoint between U.S. and India. And his experience as chargé d'affaires in New Delhi not too long ago, and also when he served as the ambassador to Sri Lanka and Maldives, provides him with a unique perspective on diplomatic and policies issue that could very well affect the diaspora. Also on the panel with us, Swadesh Chatterjee, distinguished American activist, the recipient of Padma Bhushan by the Indian government, is also served on the council in 2009. That was the advocacy or advocate council from the prime minister in 2009. Manmohan Singh was the prime minister back then. And he played a very instrumental role in the passage of the US India civilian nuclear deal. Kind of tells you how important he has been. And also a very important voice who can actually talk about how in these times can diaspora use their voice to strengthen the US India relations. Emma Rangaswamy, a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, founder of In Diaspora, again, an organization which is trying to, and has been actually, I should say, empowering the diaspora to engage in civic and philanthropic activities. His leadership has been excellent. He's been making a lot of headways into making sure that the voices of diaspora are important and are considered in shaping the relations with India, and specifically when it comes to US-India relationship. And also joining us today will be Asha Jadeja Motwani, a very prominent Silicon Valley venture capitalist, philanthropist. I mean, she's known to invest or has invested in over 200 technology startups, one of the biggest donor to the Republican Party. And she has recently offered distinctive perspective on the intersection of diaspora influence and US politics. So thank you so much, all of you. I want to welcome you to this important dialogue. And we want to be able to hear from you as to what you guys think that diaspora can and cannot do in these times. So with that, let me get started. I'm going to, ask this question to all of you, and starting with you, Atul. You know, how do you see the diaspora balancing this act of, advocating for U.S. India ties and not getting termed as, hey, you're actually lobbying from New Delhi?
Well, Rohit, first of all, thank you and appreciate you and Lalit Jha for bringing us together. India abroad is a very important and noble and distinguished name on these shores. I remember as a little boy picking up the paper copy of the newspaper in New York and DC and other places, and it really brought the community together. So a couple things. First of all, I don't speak for the community. I mean, MR is our mayor of the global Indian diaspora. I only speak for myself, so you can take that for what it's worth. But I would say that obviously the Indian diaspora in the United States loves India. It is the motherland, or in my case, the fatherland. And we have deep, deep bonds of affection for what India represents. We appreciate how much India has risen in the last 15 years and how much more is to come. We see it with our own eyes when we visit India. And we hear it when we talk to Indian friends about their confident feeling about their place in world affairs. I think for Indian Americans, there's also this great feeling that we are Indian American, that we have identity that brings us from India to America, and we have pride in our adopted nation, and we have pride in the nation that our ancestors came from. And so these moments are difficult, right? To see the two governments have a bit of a difficult time. When I speak for my organization, and I've done that dozens of times in July and August, the message being given was one that was constructive and respectful to both governments, saying, look, we have a long friendship. We have 25 years of partnership and convergence on the strategic, economic, and technological side. And friends should talk to one another in private and raise issues and work through them. And the US and India have shown that they can do that. So I think for the diaspora, looking at these last few months, the thing that they probably ask themselves is, how can they be effective? How can they be helpful? How can they be constructive? And sometimes in moments like this, it's better to engage in quiet diplomacy, and not shout from the rooftops. It may indeed be counterproductive to do that. What I've tried to do in my channel, in representing the business community, is talk about the value long-term of the world's two largest democracies collaborating on the frontier technologies of the 21st century, on forging resilient supply chains, on ensuring economic growth, and ensuring happiness for both of our countries.
I do have a follow, but I want to go to MR first. Sir, your perspective on this act of balancing things.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Lalit, for having us on this show. Very important. Again, a couple of things. Let me touch upon 3 points. One is what the Indian diaspora in the US is all about. We have 5 million of us. And again, it's very nuanced because there are people like myself and Swadesh who are born in India, who moved here. But then there's the next generation of us who are born here. And you have to differentiate the two, right? So there are people born in India and born in the US. That split is about 60% born in India, 40% born in the US. So you got to understand that split. So not necessarily are everyone Indian American in that sense. Many of them are American, okay, as well. So that's one thing to understand. Second thing is people have said, why hasn't the diaspora spoken out for us? So let me remind India and Indians what the diaspora has done for India. First of all, the diaspora as a whole has remitted last year $135 billion to India, out of which 30 billion came from the US. Okay. And these US dollars are different than other diaspora dollars. US dollars have gone to buy real estate, buy into the stock market, invest in angel capital, and so on and so forth. So this capital from the US is investing in India. Also, heads of a lot of companies and CIOs and CTOs at companies have put global capability centers in India, employing thousands and thousands of Indians in India. So the diaspora in so many ways has done things for India to improve its situation and its economy. Also, the diaspora acts as a living bridge between the US and India for Every time a US president has gone to India, we've taken people with us to talk people to people on the Indian side, much like Atul and his team take the business people together. We take other diaspora together to India and vice versa. When Prime Minister Modi comes here, we do sideline dialogues between the diaspora and Indians. So we do a lot of that stuff. So there's something for the Indian to understand. We are helping India in many, many, many ways. And finally, the Indian Americans themselves have impacted this country tremendously. We're 1% of the population. We pay 6% of the taxes. We have 75,000 doctors in the US who serve 30 million patients. We have 22,000 academics who teach 3 to 5 million college kids, so on and so forth. And in fact, there are 36,000, Rohit, 36,000 yoga studios in the US, much more than in India, actually teaching spirituality and meditation and wellness to millions of Americans. So it's you have to understand that the diaspora lives here, works here, creates its wealth here, but we also help India. So I just want to bring that in context when Indians say, "What have you guys done?" We've done a lot.
Okay, I was going to go to Swadesh G next, but I feel like he's moving his stuff there. Swadesh G, whenever you're ready, same
I'm ready.
question to you. Same question to you. You've been, a lot of people in this town where I am in Washington, D.C., take credit for the civil nuclear deal. You're the one, that name pops up every time we talk about it. Somebody who's also got a Padma Bhushan from the government, somebody who's served on the PM's Advocacy Global Council. How does the diaspora balance this out? I mean, there are talks in India especially. These are not newsroom chatters anymore. These are the member of parliament questioning the role of diaspora. How can one do this successfully?
Yeah, first thing, Rohit and Lalit, thank you very much for organizing this event. It is a pleasure to be with you. And I am a grassroots guy. I am doing this U.S. India relations for last 35 to 40 years. So I have seen it all. So whatever the member of parliament says, I think he completely forgot the history, that where we were and where we have been 6 months ago. Completely, I think it went away from his memory. Let me remind you, over my lifetime, US-India relations has transformed. India always was viewed a part of Soviet bloc and a country to be managed, not partnered with. But the rise of India's economic power and the America's interest to contain China and the activism of Indian Americans in this country has changed the relationship fundamentally. It was 2000 when, after India was put on sanction by doing the nuclear test in 1998, President Clinton went to India. That's the beginning of transformation of US-India relations. And after that sanction was lifted, I worked with Senator Jesse Helms, one of the most conservative Bengal tiger in Washington. And we have arranged, lobbied, and lifted the sanction, and that broke the ice. In year 2005, it was Republican President George W. Bush announced something which has changed the world about India's position in the world, in the global power. India became a de facto nuclear club member, that is US India civil nuclear deal. Nobody thought that it is possible that India will be allowed to have nuclear technology. So India's relationship with US really changed in the world stage in 2008. Now, if we look at it without the Indian American activism, without our involvement, we never ever have this nuclear deal passed. I think Mr. Tharoor, which is such a senior member, we did not see him on the US-India nuclear deal. We did not see him when sanction against India. So to say something about Indian diaspora, and I think the most important part, Rohit, we are American. We are American of Indian origin. Let us not forget that. Because We are out of India, as Emma rightly said, but India is never out of us. But we had to go. U.S. India civil nuclear deal was a bill introduced by the President of United States. So we could lobby it. Now, for the last 3 months, whatever happened, whatever they talk about H-1B and tariff, we had to understand what kind of effect it will have on Indian Americans, or what kind of effect it will have to Americans of Indian origin. So that two subject we had to separate it out. After lobbying for the sanction, after lobbying for the nuclear deal, I think that part is not made clear. So hopefully in the next few minutes, when my term come again, we will explain that what diaspora can do and what they can do to influence. But one thing, we are not the lobbyist for government of India. We were never lobbyists for nuclear industry. We felt that by doing the US-India civil nuclear deal, it will bring a lot more trades between the two countries, lot more employment between the two countries. That's eventually it will benefit US and the back India.
Well, to just to add to that, Swadesh, I'll have to go back and check. But I think Mr. Tharoor, during those times, was in the UN, so he couldn't have done anything to help with the nuclear deal.
That's the point I was trying to make. He was
Right.
in UN, but we
Right.
did not see his presence in Washington when we are lobbying through the deal. And when it was going through Indian Congress, Manmohan Singh faced the no, I think he ready to lose the parliament.
Right.
Because
no
of
confidence
US-India
motion.
civil nuclear deal. As you
Yeah.
know, Somnath Chatterjee was removed from speakership because he supported to have a vote. No confidence motion of Manmohan Singh. So I think that history we cannot forget. So,
Yeah. Okay, Atul, very importantly, and I know, everybody in here is talking about all these things impacting India. For a minute, let's just talk about this guest worker visa program, right? That's created furor in India. I think a lot of people in India are failing to probably understand that it has nothing to do as much as with India versus what President Trump wants to do for American workers. Same with tariffs. And then the other question I want to add is there a fear of retribution among people to speak up against certain things in this political environment?
So, first of all, I really compliment MR and Swadeshi on what they said. I mean, MR gave some great statistics, and Swadeshi gave some great context about the history of the relationship and the role of the diaspora here. But to your questions, Rohit, let me take the second one first. People are free to speak or not speak in a democracy. They are free to make their own decisions about how much they wish to engage in the national discourse. As I said, some may prefer to work quietly and not work in the public arena. There is something that Suhag Shukla made very clear in her op-ed, which is that we are governed as well by the laws of this land. And so, she mentioned, for instance, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. It's something extremely important for international audiences to understand that American citizens, and we are American citizens, are certainly able to engage in activity toward their government, but if they do so at the behest of a foreign entity and they do not register, they are violating the law. So that is a constraint that Suhag very wisely pointed out, and it's a very real and important thing. People do have to obey the law. So everyone makes their own individual choice about the extent to which they want to engage, how they engage. Maybe they talk to their local municipal councilman. Maybe they talk to their mayor. Maybe they talk to their senator or their congressman. They don't have to thunder in the news media necessarily in order to get things done. Remind me your first point again.
I mean, to what essentially what Swadeshi was saying, is there a sense of, how can or let me rephrase the question, right? I mean, in terms of what Swadeshi just said, and what's the conversation that's been going on, is there a sense of this community or the Indian American community choosing to stay silent versus being more vocal about certain things they could have been, in different times?
No, I think I recall. I answered that part. It's about the domestic political compulsions of President Trump. Look, I'm not really a domestic political analyst. I was a foreign service officer for many years. So it's weird for me to analyze my own country. I used to analyze other people's countries on behalf of my country. But my sense is this is domestic driven. You know, that the whole tariff initiative by President Trump, now the immigration initiatives, you know, efforts to reshore manufacturing capability, technology, and supply chain capabilities is very much about a domestic political narrative that helped him get elected, which is that jobs need to come back home, capability needs to come back home, that it's a more and more dangerous world, and that America was vulnerable to supply chain shocks, as we learned during the pandemic. And if you look at the narrative in right-wing social media, right-wing discourses, it's all about making sure there are jobs for Americans. And so, you know, it may be twisted by some to be anti-Indian. It can certainly be perceived that way. I can understand that. But a lot of it has to do with domestic politics in the heartland. People saying over and over again, you know, my kid got a computer sciences degree and couldn't get a job. Or my kid got a data science degree and couldn't get a job. You know, why can't my children get their jobs? And so, you know, the visa decision and the immigration decisions are sovereign, right? India makes its own sovereign decisions. The U.S. makes its decisions. But a lot of this is driven by domestic politics. And I think, you know, in a country as diverse and as layered as India, a democracy as well, I think Indians would understand that there are domestic political compulsions that may change how the United States interfaces with the world on trade, on visas, on technology, on supply chains, because of, I think, the experience of the pandemic, and also this sense that middle America, places like where J.D. Vance came from, got hollowed out in the last 30, 40 years. And the capability in terms of production also got hollowed out and needs to be restored.
Well, thank you so much for that. Because I think a lot of chatter in India has been about, oh, is President Trump doing this to, you know, just pick on India and harm India, which is, you know, which is not true. There are domestic compulsions, as you've explained. Now, let me take this to MR. And, you know, MR, we are in a very unique situation, right, in America in terms of what, you know, as people of Indian heritage cannot do and what they should be doing. You run such a big organization. I mean, can you give us examples of things that, you know, Indian Americans can do where it's not seen as lobbying, but then, you know, trying to improve relationships with US and India to the benefit of United States?
Right. So a couple of things, Rohit. One is a lot of Indian Americans I know personally have called their congressmen and senators. That's absolutely a fact. Second, a lot of the Indian American congressmen have issued statements about the H-1B visas. You can check their Twitter handles or their websites. So that has been done, and people have called as many of these folks as possible. The problem we are facing as a community is the vitriol on Twitter, a la X, and hate crimes, physical hate crimes that are increasing. So Indiaspora is taking a role in addressing those issues. So for those of you listening out there and watching the show, you know, follow Real Indian Americans as a Twitter handle. We are using that Twitter handle to counter the vitriol on the social media channels. And we're doing that with facts, not with emotional outbursts. So we've done a lot of that to build the narrative online on social media with facts. For example, even on the H-1B visa, we've weighed in to show the benefits of getting H-1B visas to America. And these are documented facts. Okay. There are also polls in the US that we point out have shown Americans support legal immigration. There are many polls that support it actually, and the numbers have increased positively in the last few years. So what we use our channels to point out the facts of the psyche of the American people, the facts on why H-1B is a positive thing for the US, and also what Indian Americans in general have done for America at large. I mean, like I said, we have 75,000 doctors, and many of them are in rural populations where they actually serve rural Americans in red states. That's not gone unnoticed, but we need to amplify that to say, hey, you know, for example, in Pennsylvania, there's a doctor who's delivered 8,000 babies in a rural red county in America. We feature that doctor and say, look, these are Indian Americans helping regular Americans, right? So all this is a role of in diaspora, and we do that through social media. We do that through our blogs, our newsletters, and so forth. But like Atul mentioned, there's a lot of angst and worry and concern with white Americans in terms of losing jobs, cities being hollowed out, and it's very natural to blame offshoring or an immigrant taking their job, right? It's very, very natural. So we need to educate them. We can't hurl back emotional rhetoric at them. So that's what our role is. Contact Congress, contact senators, but also we want to make it known to the public at large that Indian Americans, like Atul said and Swadesh said, are Americans first. And we also love India. So we're not Indians first who are living in America. So that distinguishment, that thing needs to be brought forth.
And I want to, I want to take this point and give it a different flavor. Now I'm going to take this to Swadeshi. Swadeshi, um, yes, there are challenges. Everybody's acknowledged there's the ongoing challenge between India and U.S. relationship. Even the diplomacy probably hasn't worked. People have questioned the diplomats doing their jobs and so on and so forth. Are Indian Americans an easy target for the failures of what should have been pointed towards, the diplomacy, right? I mean, are Indian Americans becoming the soft target and be like, and there have been people who've come out and said things like, you are just good for, gathering crowds, but not for helping India out. I mean, how do you see that criticism?
Yeah, I am not sure that the statements are correct because, as you know, I'll go back again when the nuclear deal came to Congress. The Democratic congressman said me, very close friend of mine, who was the co-chair of India caucus, when I went to the Hill and met with him about the nuclear deal, the first thing he said, Suresh, it is DOA. I said, what is DOA? It is dead on arrival. So don't waste your time. So I think what we should do, I think we have a role to play, but the way the role should be that how it is affecting United States, not India. What United States is losing, and point number one, that H1B people have contributed 86 billion in the US economy for their taxes, state tax and federal tax. H1B workers are there for all the Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and their innovation. So the country job creation will be choked because without this talent, you cannot generate talent in 6 months or 1 year. So I think if we can talk to the congressman and senator, not just calling. One thing we did, which was very successful in those days, that you walk on the hill, Washington Chalo. So we have hundreds of people knocked at the door of the Washington congressman and senator and spend time with their chief of staff, with their staff, with congressmen, why this deal is important, why it is good for United States. And we put a front page ad in Washington Post, 110,000, why it is good for America. So I think if we can articulate it properly and try to make the point as an American that it will affect American economy, it will affect the jobs. We are not, Indians are not coming and taking the job. We are not coming from South America by crossing the border. Yes, some people are coming, but this is a technology people. They are all talent and we need this talent. And the irony is, 4 5 years ago, we are talking about Staple Act, that all the Indian talent coming here doing masters and PhD, they should be given green card as soon as they graduate. Staple the green card. From that point, what we came today, last 4 months, it is very unfortunate, but I think diaspora can play a role, as Amar said properly. I think we not only we have to call, but we had to go to Washington and knock on the door in not in 10 or 20, it had to be in hundreds. And but it need to be organized very carefully, and they have to give the message that we are not lobbying for India. we are lobbying for United States.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go to Asha ji next. Asha ji, thank you so much for joining us. Uh, Again, I'll just give a brief introduction again. She's a very prominent Silicon Valley venture capitalist. She's invested in more than 200 technology startups, a very big donor to the Republican Party recently, and has offered distinctive perspective on the diaspora's influence. Asha ji, in your opinion, what is that the diaspora can do and should do to improve relationship between India and US? And there are things, frankly, that shouldn't, or people are calling, like Congressman Shashi Tharoor, sorry, Parliamentarian Shashi Tharoor, saying that Indian diaspora is staying quiet, and that's not helping.
So I think, one thing is that a lot of the Indian diaspora is, the card-carrying Democrats, right? So we don't have that many Indians who are sort of, established Republican Party supporters, and not as many as I thought. I myself am surprised because I'm a new Republican myself. I have been a Democrat for many, many years. I'm a recent convert. And when I started dabbling in Washington, D.C. politics, I discovered that weren't that many people that I thought I would, run into. But I think those of us who are in the circle now, in the Republican circle, people know us. I mean, crudely speaking, really the best thing that seems to work is to write a check towards certain things. And what that means is, maybe help towards midterm elections, maybe support some candidates, go for, dinners hosted by the Republican Party, and get to know people, start forming a relationship with the Republicans. I have, for my own self, started developing a strong relationship with J.D. Vance and a little bit Howard Lutnick. I'm trying to get to know Steve Witkoff a little bit more. I would like to know Sergio Gore a little bit more. I have been dabbling with an initiative called, I think it's called Senate Leadership Fund, being promoted by Senator Thune, um, which is also quite. It's actually it's a fund which is helping with the midterm elections. Once you write a check, you suddenly get on the radar of everybody in Washington D.C. And I think it's a wise thing to do if you can afford it. I think it's a wise thing to do. For me, once I got involved with the Senate Leadership Fund, I could actually pick up the phone and ask Senator Thune's team, for example, could Paul Kapoor be fast tracked on the Senate, hearings, confirmation hearings? And I got a response from them saying, yes, he's on tomorrow. So what I'm saying is that there is something that, I mean, look, I'm brand new to Washington D.C., unlike some of you, but for me it was very rewarding to see that there was almost an instant result for support, showing my support to the Senate Leadership Fund. So there are those things. As far as J.D. Vance goes, for example, the Republican Party is hosting a Diwali party at my home, and J.D. Vance and Usha will be there. Will be fundraising for again for the Republican Party. And I'll be inviting a few people from the Bay Area for that dinner. This is pretty common practice. This is new. I mean, for me, this is all new, but it's common practice apparently in Washington. You have these dinners, people show up, and you raise some funding. But then you are on a phone call. You're on a direct call with, and I'm not talking about with JD, but you're on a direct call with very very key people there. So
Mhm.
I don't know if this is confidential, but I'm just going to tell you. For example, after the Senate Leadership Fund involvement, I went and met Senator Lindsey Graham. I sat down with him in Washington, D.C. I said, Mr. Graham, what is all this noise about India buying oil, and you guys were the ones who supported India buying oil from Russia. So why is all this noise happening? And I must say, to his credit, he told me that India must switch the narrative to saying it's a peace builder, that it has a foot in the door with both Ukraine and with Russia, and that in sort of focusing on Russia buying oil from Russia, sorry, India buying oil from Russia, that the Indian narrative should be that we are peace builders between Ukraine and Russia. And this is from Senator Graham. This was very good advice, I thought. Now, I checked with the embassy staff to see if we have a narrative building, PR team and so on. I don't know if we have one, frankly. Shouldn't we have one? Maybe we have a brand new one that the Indian team might have hired. But I mean, these are small amounts that the Indian government can do, like hiring a PR team, right, or hiring a lobby team that can shift the narrative. So why not? So for me, my suggestion to anybody is that if you can afford it, get involved by by showing financial support for certain things which show that you have a commitment to the Republican Party.
Okay. And this is, for all of you actually on the panel, me first for DSG, MR, and Atul. And if somebody doesn't want to be seen as partisan, I mean, what opportunities do community members have? I mean, if they want to be coming across as supporting or supporter of a GOP or a Democrat, I mean, what can the community do in their personal capacity without having the ability to write those checks?
Yeah. One of the things we do, Rohit, is in Diaspora is nonpartisan. So we don't take sides. We work with the government that's in power. So our role is, for example, we're having a Diwali party in DC and inviting Republicans and Democrats to come together. We hope that in the celebration of the holidays, we can get some of these Republican leaders and Democratic leaders to come together in the spirit of Diwali to talk to each other and start that reconciliation process. So we're trying it in a very different angle. We're trying to use Diwali in order to do this, as opposed to writing checks to one side or the other, because we need to do all of it. We need people like Asha writing checks. We need people like Atul taking a business perspective. We need Swadesh with his perspective on what happened in the past to bring it to the current situation. But our role really is to bring both sides together. Our role is to be nonpartisan, and that's the approach we're taking. And we're using Diwali as that opportunity.
Okay. Atul, if you want to comment on that.
I'd like to talk about institutions, Rohit. If you look at other successful diasporas in the United States, and I always look with great admiration at Jewish Americans, they are not only absolutely loyal Americans, they love this country, they want what's best for this country, but they have established and funded superb institutions in Washington to advocate for their perspectives lawfully to the United States government to help influence and also educate. And in a democracy, in the churn of ideas of a free and open society, having those institutions is extremely important. And I would argue that a project of work for Indian Americans who also are loyal citizens and love their country is to develop an institutional voice. I'll give you an example from a long, long time ago. I was the brand new junior desk officer for UAE and Qatar at the State Department. A lady called my office phone and said, "Hi, are you the desk officer?" I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "May I have your name?" I gave it, and telephone number, this and that, email. I said, "May I ask who's calling?" She said, "Yes, I'm from the American Jewish Committee. We'd like to send you some writings every now and again, just some perspectives that we have on the region. Would that be all right?" I said, "I welcome it. I'd love it." And then I got more and more of these calls from APAC and other groups. And they were giving me information. They were giving me their perspectives. They were sharing their insights. They had policy writers that were giving their opinions about not what was good for Israel, what was good for the United States of America. And that is the key. Going to Swadesh's earlier point, if we can create institutions that can articulate from the perspective of Indian Americans what is good for the United States of America, that may also encompass India, because frankly, what's good for our great democracy is probably also good for India's great democracy. But there is a need for those really sober, capable, nonpartisan umbrella institutions to propagate knowledge in Washington.
I
Okay.
agree, Atul. And just to add to it, Rohit, the Jewish, diaspora is a benchmark. For example, there are 535 people in Congress and the Senate. Literally all 535, when they get elected for the first time, get an invitation and a business class ticket and 1 week paid trip to Israel. And literally, I would say out of the 535 people in Congress, probably 500 have been to Israel, know what the country is about, been informed and educated. Same thing with India. Maybe we're lucky if 100 people in the Senate and House have actually visited India. So, looking at the Indian side, I would say that the Indian government and Indian institutions need to target these 535 and over the next couple of years have a program that gets all of them to come and visit India. Because once you visit India, you see the richness and the diversity and the vibrancy of India, they will change their attitude to India, right? So definitely that's something India can do as a country through its institutions. Also, the Indian Americans are getting more sophisticated. There are now political action committees that have been established and so on and so forth. A lot more has to be done because most of those political action committees to date have been on the Democratic side. We need some pacts created on the Republican side, and maybe people like Asha and others can help create that and form strong bonds with both parties. But it's not something in Diaspora can do as a nonprofit.
I
So,
do have one thing.
let me make
Go ahead.
one
Go ahead.
point,
No, go ahead, Suresh. Yeah,
Rohit, if you don't mind.
sure.
You know, writing checks, doing Diwali party and Holi, that will very short lasting, shortly. We should do that, but that is not going to bring the bipartisan elected member in Congress to have a policy discussion. I think what diaspora should do, I strongly believe in that, that we should have a policy discussion by the bipartisan, both Republican and Democrat elected member, Congress and Senator, and bring these issues about H1B, why it is not good for US, why this tariff 50%, how it will affect the trade in United States, how it will get the jobs abolished. Unless we have this discussion in front of the people in public, let the congressman, senator make statement. One thing I can tell you though, no matter how partisan in Washington, in one area they have the vote, that is U.S. India relations. They already, that work has been done because they depend on Indian American communities funds, so they will come when it comes to US India relations and Indian American is involved. That has been proven. It has been done before. So we need regular every 3 months. As Otul rightly said, we don't have the institution. So I think we together should have that kind of discussion in front of the press and let the senator, congressman deliver something. Don't just take our money. Let us use our mind and try to get them on the table. I strongly believe that work, we have done it. It is successful because they need Indian American much more than what we think. That's what
Yeah.
I think that we can contribute.
I mean, I'd be surprised if some of the things that have been said on this discussion would come as, news to those people managing relations between India and the US. Perhaps there are other things which we do not know about. But before I open up the discussion for questions, I want to go to Lalitji, and either Lalitji, you can share your perspective or ask a question to any of our panelists.
Thank you, Rohit, for doing this, and thanks for joining this India Abroad initiative, the dialogues. I'll let you open up the platform for others to ask questions.
Okay. All right. So I am looking at few hands that have been raised. Let's first go to, hold on. Where is he? There we go. Rajiv Ji, who wanted to ask a question. I also think there was somebody else there too. Yeah. If Rajiv Ji, you can ask question. If not, then we'll go to Nayan. Okay, let's go to Nayan first. Go ahead, Nayan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Nayan Seth from Indo Asian News Service. I'm based in DC. I have a question. Maybe it depends on whoever wants to jump in can do that about the role of the Indian government. And I'm talking here about lobbying, which is sometimes a dirty word in India, but not so much in this country. So I have a question regarding that. That how do you evaluate the Indian government's efforts in terms of making inroads in Congress as well as in the administration until now? And maybe if someone can do a comparison with Pakistan, a smaller country, but they spend more money on formal lobbying in DC. If you can do that, thank you so much.
I'm happy to take that. Rohit,
Go
is that
ahead.
okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Asha Ji. Yeah.
So I think with the Indian side, I'm noticing that Ambassador Quatra, Vinay Quatra, is actually putting in, really decent effort into uh, going to various think tanks, talking to journalists, and getting to speak to everybody. So there is some effort going on. We also have hired, maybe we've hired a firm that can help us place certain articles and arrange certain meetings and so on. I think the most important thing that Pakistan is doing separately compared to what we are doing, and which is reaping huge benefits, is that it's piggybacking on influence networks of Qatar. And that actually is something, and the reason that's happening, there's a long history there, Nayan, but the history is that the General Corilla, who is based in Qatar, was based in Qatar till I think till last week. He was running Central Command for America in Qatar, managing 10,000 troops in Qatar, in Doha. They were, providing security guarantees to the region and stuff like that. And so, when we were in Afghanistan for those 20 years, General Corilla worked pretty closely with the Pakistan Army. So that relationship is old and it's been there for a long time. So when the Afghan war got over, unfortunately, that relationship continued. And through General Corilla and various, things that are going on in Doha right now, the Pakistanis are happily able to piggyback on Qatari influence networks, which we can never match. I mean, Qataris are spending billions of dollars on lobbying, media purchase, influence, and so on. And I don't think we Indian government I don't think they want to spend that kind of money. So, so anyway, that's my 2 cents. So, and I think that's the success that Pakistan has. It is not spending its own money. It has one lobby firm, a very dubious one, which belongs to a old bodyguard of Trump. And it's a dubious relationship. But the biggest thing that Pakistan has, a trump card in its up its sleeve is the Qatari networks.
Interesting. Anybody else who wants to add to
Yeah,
this question?
Rohit,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think we had lobbyists. They tried first to hire Bob Blackwell, who was the Indian ambassador, a Republican. Werner Lifford was one of the lobbyists. Then they hired Bob Dole's firm as a lobbyist. But the amount of money Indian government spend, that is minuscule compared to Pakistani government. And I have not seen in my experience in Washington that they are any if more effective than the Pakistani lobbyist. So I think I had a lot of discussion with ambassador. They have increased the amount of money. Now they have got Republican one lobbyist and Democrat, but I am not sure that it is that effective in the United States Congress.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Let's go to Rakesh ji. Rakesh ji, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone, and can you hear me, Rohit?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having this wonderful forum, and it was so I mean good to hear Atul, Swadesh, Lalitji, and MR and Asha Jays. Thank you, Rohit. You see, I just would like to add one comment and one question. Under the Foundation for India and Indian Diaspora Studies FIDS, we took the delegation of nearly about 120 people and we met almost 70, 80 congressmen back in July. And the advocacy was not about only one thing. We just shortlisted um, five policy issues and we were doing the advocacy and we reached out and we made a point and presentation in terms of Indo-Pacific trade and security. We also talked about strengthening the U.S. India strategic partnership. What are the areas? What are the shared interest? Our concern on ICT initiatives. And also at the same time, we talked about the global collaboration against radical and jihadist terrorism. And we also talked about rising religious phobia, protecting Indian origin minorities. So those issues have been taken. But the challenge here is, how do we amplify our voice? Our voice has been muted, and we are not able to make a noise. Actually, what Washington here is a noise, and our voice is somehow muted. So my question is that beyond meeting with the elected official, how can the Indian diaspora move from being passive observer to an active shapers of the Indo-US narrative? And what are the innovative ways? We have been writing through New India Abroad, and we are raising our voice. But then, what innovative ways you think through media engagement, think tanks, academic collaboration, or grassroots diplomacy can we amplify our collective voice so it does not remain muted but instead become a credible force in strengthening the trust, addressing misunderstandings, and advancing the shared democratic vision of India and the United States? You see, every state, I can tell you the Bay Area, the New Jersey, the Chicago, the Washington, we have several Indian organizations doing Diwali, Holi, but it makes no sense and it's very short lived, as Swadesh rightly said. So that's my point. Anybody can answer to this question. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Sure. MR, Atul, Swadeshi, Asha
Why don't I jump in?
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
the necessary ingredient is relevance. And this goes back to the fact that India is a democracy, we're a democracy. If you're going to talk to an elected representative or someone in the executive branch about anything, you have to figure out what's relevant to the other person. And I say this from my former government experience. Government listens when there's something relevant being said and when it's relevant to what they're trying to achieve. I think when you engage with governments, you should be respectful, you should be constructive, and you should offer something relevant. And that would be the ingredient for having meaningful policy dialogue that can actually shape the thinking in government.
I
Yeah,
agree, Atul. I think
go ahead.
in
Go ahead,
terms of
Emma.
responding to government, I think any such move that you guys made, bringing people to Washington to talk to government, has to have an America first kind of positioning, and then the issues are in that context, as opposed to saying in India, so and so is being done. It's like, what is the relevance to America? So anything we do,
100%.
lobbying or otherwise in Washington, has to be done with America first.
Yeah, very
100%.
good point you made, Emma. I will add something from my experience. Our voice is not muted. It is all depend on how you present your voice, number one. And when 2000 President Clinton was going to India, as many of you remember, that Indian government did not want President Clinton to go to Pakistan. That is their number one agenda. And White House called me to have a meeting at the White House to brief President that he is going to India, what he should do after so many years. And I have people from around the country went to White House. The first question the National Security Advisor asked me, Suresh, do you think President should go to Pakistan? And the answer I gave is that, Mr. Secretary, we came here to talk about what president should do when he goes to India. Whether president will go to Pakistan or not, that is the based on the security interest of the United States. We are American. We came here to give input what president should cover when he is in India. So our voice was And to your surprise, President Clinton, I was in the trip, first thing President did, he met with Indian American, and then he went to Pakistan for 1 hour. And that is the happiest day from the government of India, because he made it very clear in Pakistan that LOC is the line of control and that is the Lakshman Rekha. That's one he declared in Pakistan and came back to Delhi. And the Indian government was happy, but they were lobbying. They called me so many times. So what I'm telling you, Rajiv ji, is if we can get our people together, right-minded people, our voice is not muted. So we had to be more proactive, because the Congress and the Senate, they are all wanted to have a good relations between US and India. And you don't have to sell India anymore. India is sold. We are in the much later stage of the relationship, as because something happened last 3 months, that is not going to destroy the fundamentals of US-India relationship.
Okay. Quickly to Geeta Sikanji, and then I know we have to wrap it up in like less than 60 seconds from now. But Geeta ji, if you have a question or a comment.
Thank you, Rohit ji, and thank you, Lalit ji, New India Abroad, and all the speakers. My name is Geeta Sikand, and I'm with the non-partisan PAC, Americans for Hindus. It's a super PAC, and I appreciated Asha Jadeja ji Motwani's comments about supporting PACs. And my experience has been that I too, like Asha ji, am a recent convert to Republican. And through a couple of Republican PACs, I have noted that, for example, Shali Kumarji's Republican PAC, right, Hindu PAC, and also recently Chokalingamji joined the Conservative PAC. And a lot of contributions have been made by us Hindus, but it seems that we are not being counted in the whole scenario. And I would like the speaker's comments on what more can we do at this point.
Question.
Yeah, I think one thing, I hear of all these PACs now, which I was not aware of. Maybe all those PACs need to get together as well and see if there's a common front. That might be an interesting one, and maybe Asha and others can lead that effort to get the Hindu PAC, the Conservative PAC, all of them together to see, based on America first, what are the issues that can benefit India as well. Something like that.
Yeah, Geeta,
Okay,
as
go
far
ahead.
as I go, Geeta, I'm just, taking a shortcut because of lack of time. I'm taking a shortcut and writing a big fat check, and everybody loves me now. That's the truth.
You can't have been more transparent than that, Ashaji. So, in the interest of time, we want to obviously continue this discussion, but I know our leaders have to leave. So, if we'll start with closing our, statements, arguments, whatever you want to call them. We'll start with you, Ashaji. Closing arguments from you.
Rohit, you want me to say something about
Yeah, just anything else that you wanted to add to this conversation, because we'll be wrapping up in like
Right,
2 minutes
right.
from now.
No,
Yeah.
listen, we can all do anything. Everybody doesn't have to write a check. Sometimes people can't afford writing a check. I think what's really important is that we do what we can. Whether if you are on a campus, support a campus group that can give voice to our Indian American ideas, values, and aspirations. One of the points that MR made just now was that, the fact that we love this country and we belong here, our children and grandchildren are growing up in the US, it's very important to communicate that we are Americans also, and that our interest is in strengthening the US. As we strengthen this US India corridor, it is America first, and it's important to communicate that very clearly in any circle that you are in, whether you are at a county level, state level, federal level. Do that, and the more conversations you have, the better. I personally believe that even having conversations with the opposite side is important, and having dialogues and debates with people that don't agree with you is important. And for me, because of my, 30-year association with the Democratic Party, of course, all of them are my old friends. So I sit across the table and have ad nauseum lunches, coffees with old friends, old enemies, new enemies, whatever you call it. But I communicate, I keep talking, and this is important to do.
We call them frenemies, Ashaji. Go ahead, Amar,
Yeah,
your
I
closing
agree.
remarks.
I think we need to do all of the above and keep it going with everything from Diwali parties to political action committees getting together to people calling on Capitol Hill and walking the halls of Capitol Hill and all this stuff. We need to keep doing it. My thing is, we ask India and Indians to stay strong. If you look at the relationship, like Swadesh said, over 35 years, it's going up this way. Okay. So this, in the history of time, will be viewed as an aberration, as a blip. And I think on the U.S. India relationship, with the diaspora acting as a living bridge, will only get stronger. So keep the faith.
Swadeshji, your closing remarks.
Yeah, I am very proud to be an American of Indian origin. I was always, I am still proud. And what I have seen that US India relations came from, I am very optimistic that US India relations cannot be an autopilot. We, as a diaspora, American of Indian origin, we have big role to play, and we played and will play more, because the relationship is not just between Foggy Bottom and South Block anymore. Because when the relationship will go south, we are there to hold it. We were not there before. And let us not be just ATM machine to give money to politicians. We should ask, we should demand now that what we are getting for this money, not just keep the photo and keep on the living room and have a personal relationship. It is important. But I think we had to go beyond the personal relationship. And every politics is local. So you had to be visible in the local community. You had to be visible to Attorney General, to Governor, to Congressman, to Senator, so that you can influence. And our voice is very important voice in this country. We are affluent. We contribute so much to this country, and they are all aware. Now we had to make that sure. We have to make more noise in Washington, and the noise can be made in different way, including Diwali and Holi. And we did Howdy Modi, and everybody see Trump is the best friend. Trump was in Ahmedabad. Looks like the relationship will go. Look what happened. This one time Diwali or Holi is not going to cut it. So that noise making had to continue, as Amar said, and I'm very hopeful. I'm not disappointed. Yeah, there are some issues, and there will be always some issues, because it is two democratic country. India is a different level now. India is not the same India what you can bully any country anymore. So I think you will see that things will be different. We'll be talking different next year or in the end of the year.
Okay, and Ambassador Keshav, final words from you.
4 R's. First of all, Rohit and Lalit, thank you very much. This has been great, and I really enjoyed seeing all of my fellow discussants. The 4 R's are rhetoric, reality, relevance, and reciprocity. I think we have seen the lofty rhetoric that guided us for 25 years kind of stripped away by the reality of changing politics in America. I think Indians need to understand that our politics not only are changing, but changing really fast. And that in 3 years, we're going to be a very different America from what we are right now. It's going to be sweeping. The ambition of this administration to change the economic configuration and how we interface with the world is so ambitious that countries have to decide if they want to adjust to that. And this leads to the question of relevance and reciprocity. If we can be relevant to one another, that is the glue of taking a relationship forward. I want to see all kinds of things done. I want us to have greater strategic congruity in the Indo-Pacific. I want us to break down the barriers to nuclear energy cooperation, which is critical to artificial intelligence innovation. I want to see us ensure our defense capability is greater than any of our adversaries and enemies, frankly. I am impatient to see the United States and India innovate on life sciences, agriculture, manufacturing, supply chains. I don't think the governments can afford not to be relevant to one another, given the great power risks that are out there in the 21st century. And this then requires reciprocity. I help you, you help me, we go forward together. If the governments can figure all that out, there's a possibility here. But for Indian Americans, our job is to remind of the overall logic of what's good for both of our countries, because we are loyal citizens of this country, the United States of America. Great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. So aptly put, the 4 R's. And thank you so much to all our esteemed panelists, Ambassador Kashyap, Asha Jadida Motwani, Swadesh Chatterjee, and Amaro Goswami. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences today. And today's discussion highlighted the diversity, which Lalitji wanted to do, is to bring all these voices from the Indian American community so that we can talk about, advocacy and political neutrality and the way the diaspora can influence the relationships with India. So thank you so much. I hope today's conversation encourages all of us in the community to reflect on how we engage and how we amplify our voices responsibly. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rohit and Lalit. Thank you.
Thank you.